Welcome, Age of Vintage Society. Bruce Lee had a rich and storied friendship with fellow big screen icon Steve McQueen, but the two also shared an interesting rivalry with each other. What made Bruce Lee and Steve McQueen the biggest rivals? Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Age of Vintage channel. Bruce Lee's rivalry with Steve McQueen. King of Cool versus King of Kung Fu. Inside Steve McQueen and Bruce Lee's rivalry. I had a million reasons to love Bruce Lee, but I hated him. Steve McQueen. Like most things, pop culture icons usually have a shelf life, but in Hollywood there are exceptions. The legends surrounding some actors have gone far beyond their lives and careers, capturing the imagination of generations of movie fans that, in some ways, defies logical explanation. Yet here they are, constantly being discovered by a new audience who ensure that their names will live on. Two of them are Steve McQueen, known as the King of Cool, and Bruce Lee, the undisputed master of martial arts. Those who are unaware they are walking in darkness will never see the light. Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee and Steve McQueen had a major rivalry, despite being the best of friends. Both Lee and McQueen were two of the biggest actors of their era, but they also hailed from two different worlds. Lee was a rising star in the martial arts movie industry, while McQueen was an A-list actor in Hollywood and a household name. Today, Bruce Lee is remembered as a martial arts legend who wowed audiences with his performances in 5 kung fu movies, one of which being the Hollywood classic Enter the Dragon. However, it took him a while to gain this reputation, whereas his friend, Steve McQueen, had been making movies in Hollywood for several years and was high in demand by some of the biggest studios in the industry. During the 1960s, McQueen starred in big movies like The Magnificent Seven, Bullet, The Thomas Crown Affair, and The Great Escape. He also received critical acclaim for his role in the anti-Vietnam War film The Sand Pebbles, which earned him an Oscar nomination for Best Actor. Both men had to overcome seemingly impossible odds. McQueen a seriously abusive childhood, Lee struggling to make it as a star in a country at a time when it just didn't seem likely it would ever happen for him. Two people that, on the surface, couldn't seem more different, yet were united spiritually by a determination to achieve their goals, and as people by the fact that Lee actually became a martial arts instructor to McQueen, which bonded them. At the same time, there was a serious level of competition that existed between them, much of it stemming from the fact that McQueen was extremely territorial over the status and success he had achieved in Hollywood, while Lee made no secret of the fact that he absolutely wanted what McQueen had and would do what he had to achieve it. It was a rivalry stemmed from ambition. They met through their mutual friendship with celebrity hairstylist Jay Sebring. Their association began with McQueen hiring Lee to teach him kung fu. The two didn't become fast friends, as McQueen biographer Marshall Terrell has noted that the actor was too paranoid to make friends with people easily, so his friendship with Lee had to grow from the time they spent training together. At first, McQueen spent time with Lee because he felt that he had something he could learn from the martial artist. During their training sessions, Lee was greatly impressed with McQueen, a person who he said doesn't know the meaning of quitting. They were so close that when Lee was ready to buy his first house, he sought McQueen's advice, who, in their conversation, offered to cover the down payment for him. Lee turned it down, but always thought it was a kind and generous gesture. Let's stop for a minute and think about it. I am curious. What do you think? Was there actually a rivalry? Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. As their bond deepened and the respect that they had for each other grew stronger over time, the two formed what Terrell called a professional sibling rivalry. Lee's goal was always to become a huge star in Hollywood, and he wasn't shy about his intention to become even more famous than McQueen himself. His ambition to surpass McQueen increased when Lee and James Coburn began developing the silent flute. It was Lee's plan for McQueen to star in the movie, but he refused to take the part, explaining that he didn't want to use his fame to make other people stars. Women were caught in the middle too. Sometimes there was unspoken competition about women. Though both men were married, they had dalliances outside of their relationships. One of the alleged affairs Lee had was with Sharon Farrell. One time Lee travelled to McQueen's set out of town as his trainer, but he also had an ulterior motive. Farrell was McQueen's co-star, and she and Lee were seeing each other. She felt guilty about it and was looking for a way out, so she messed with McQueen as a way to ease out of the situation with Lee. McQueen was rich and successful, and Lee was married with dreams of a Hollywood career. She wound up dumping Lee. Steve McQueen scared the crap out of Bruce Lee driving on Mulholland. As furious as this made Lee, they remained friends. One popular story about their friendship involves them going for a drive, and Lee being terrified by McQueen's ridiculously fast driving. Their bond survived that and more, as did their rivalry. When Steve McQueen was just starting out in the 1950s, he hung with Frank Sinatra and saw the private jets, limousines, red carpet events, screaming fans, opened doors and fawning admiration. "I want some of that," McQueen whispered to his wife. In the 1960s it was Bruce Lee's turn to feel the same way. What Lee wanted more than anything was a new sports car. He neglected his old Chevy Nova, hardly ever cleaning it. The only thing he liked was the sticker on the back window with the inscription, "This car is protected by the Green Hornet." Hollywood hairstylist Jay Sebring would let Lee race his Shelby Cobra along Mulholland Drive. Lee admired the Cobra, but what he really desired was a Porsche 911 S Targa, because McQueen had one. On August 26, 1968, he visited Bob Smith's Volkswagen Porsche dealership in Hollywood for a test drive. As soon as he got home, he called up McQueen in Palm Springs. "Steve, I'm going to get a Porsche like yours." "Look, Bruce, let me take you for a ride in mine when I get back," McQueen cautioned. "It's a hot car, but if you don't know what you're doing, you can get into trouble with this thing." McQueen could have made his living as a Grand Prix driver, while Lee was by all accounts a menace behind the wheel. "He was just way too fast," says Dan Inosanto, Lee's training partner. "It would scare me." Lee was expecting a joyride, but McQueen hoped to frighten Lee out of buying a Porsche. McQueen picked up Lee and drove up the San Fernando Valley to Mulholland Drive. "Okay, Bruce, you ready?" McQueen said. "Yes, I'm all set. Let's go." McQueen peeled away, grinded through the gears as he twisted and turned along the winding, dangerous path high in the Santa Monica Mountains. "What do you think of this power, Bruce?" McQueen shouted over the engine roar. Lee said nothing. "Watch this," McQueen yelled as he slalomed to the edge of the precipice. "Isn't that great, Bruce? See how it handles? Now watch how I slide it." McQueen put the Porsche into a tail slide as he went right to the edge. "Isn't that great, Bruce?" No reply. "Watch this, Bruce. Sucker will do a mean 180, McQueen announced as he geared it up, spun it around and stopped the car. He looked over. "What do you think, Bruce?" But Lee wasn't in the seat. McQueen looked down and saw Lee huddled in the footwell with his hands over his head. Lee shouted as he pulled himself back into the seat. "McQueen, I'll bloody kill you. I'll kill you, McQueen. I'm gonna kill you." McQueen saw the look of rage on Lee's face and it terrified him. He knew how deadly Lee could be when he was angry. so McQueen raced back up Mulholland Drive as fast as he could. "Bruce, calm down," McQueen shouted. "Steve, slow down," Lee cried out. "You won't hit me, will you, Bruce?" McQueen pleaded. "No, no," said Lee. "You won't hurt me, will you?" McQueen asked again. "No, no," yelled Lee. "Just stop the car, stop the car." McQueen finally pulled over to the side, and Lee said, "I will never drive with you again, McQueen, never." After making a few movies, Lee wrote a letter to McQueen, claiming that he was now the bigger star. McQueen humorously responded with a photo of himself signed, "To Bruce, my biggest fan." Following Bruce Lee's death, the strength of their relationship was demonstrated when McQueen served as a pallbearer at the actor's funeral. Steve McQueen suffered a few losses within a certain span of time, but he was known to avoid funerals. He didn't attend Sharon Tate's after she was murdered. McQueen was friends with her and Roman Polanski, and he knew her for years. When it was time for Lee's service in Seattle, he flew from LA to attend. According to Polly, Coben and the chairman of Warner Brothers also showed up. But it was McQueen's presence that surprised them all. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you are new here, and if you want to support my work, please visit my Patreon page. Now it is your turn. What do you think about Bruce and McQueen's relationship? I personally think their true friendship behind the rivalry was adorable.